Hey guys, welcome to the Tech Career Booster. Today I want to start a new series of videos. We're going to start building an app from scratch. It's going to be a runner's app, and you're going to know more about that later on today. But I have a very special guest today, Lucas Nascimento, and he's going to be talking to us. He's a very experienced dev. He's going to be helping us on dev that app. For this video, we are gonna actually kick off the development of the app. I want to bring to you guys how it is to build a real app for the real world. It's different from any exercise or any things you have been doing on training stuff or in any other course. This app is going to be used by real users. And this series of videos starting today is made for junior developers and for people who are starting their career. So if you are just starting, if you are learning how to build, and if you are interested in architecture and how to build an app from scratch, stay with us. First of all, I want to ask Lucas to actually introduce himself. Tell us, Lucas, who you are, what you are doing here, why you want to help us.
For sure. First of all, thanks just to having me here. So it's a pleasure. As you mentioned, like we are both like a very experienced developer. Myself, especially, I have over 15 years just developing not just apps and even desktop applications. So I've started work for web company as a web developers back in Brazil, and then from there on, I went to a bank. So work as a system analyst in there, and then migrate to Australia, which was like in a month is gonna complete like 10 years of that migration. Yeah. And then
Congratulations.
since then I've been building apps and working with the latest technologies in the market. And currently I'm very lucky to be, your teamwork. So yeah, it's a pleasure also to work with you. And yeah, and here I am, So yeah, that's good.
Cool. Yeah, guys. Lucas, as he just mentioned, like he working my team currently, and when I spoke to him like about this app, he put his hands up and say, "Look, I wanna help you in this app. I wanna build that together, and that's what we are doing here." So let's understand a bit more about what this app is. Lucas, anything else you wanna compliment about yourself or why you are here helping us, or can I continue with the app itself?
No, you can continue. It's like I said, like you need help, and I was, oops, hands up. I want to help you out. So here I am.
Cool. All right. Yeah, let me give you guys a bit of context. Um, I'm actually a marathon runner. I love to run like when on my free time. That's one of my hobbies. And one thing I'm missing is actually an app to book all the park runs or the things I'm going to do with my mates. We have a group of people who run together. And for this group, it's actually pretty hard to book when we're going to be running, who is going to be there, and all that sort of stuff. We have other apps like Strava or maybe even Running Heroes or different apps for runners, but none of them can actually do the things we want to do as a group of runners. So I just came up with that idea uh, on building an app to actually book those park runs to help the runners. And then in the same way, we're going to be helping people here in the Tech Career Booster. So you guys, we're going to be developing this app from scratch. I want to be showing you how we're going to be doing that, all the steps, all the decisions we have to do over the process, everything you have to do to build an app from scratch. So we actually have a few goals here. One goal is actually show you guys, I want to bring to the Tech Career Booster how we can build a real app from scratch. And that's one of the pillars I'm always saying to you guys you have to build when you are starting your career. You have to have your own personal project. That's going to be my personal project. Obviously, I'm not starting my career, but that's something I'm interested in. I want to learn. And then I decided to bring that. And while I was doing that, I was planning. Obviously, I was sharing that with Lucas. I've been sharing that with people in my network, and Lucas put his hands up and said, "Look, I can help you. I have pretty experience. I have some experience in here, in serverless, in some tech stack, which I'm not experienced in. So thanks, Lucas, for putting your hands up and helping me with that. I'm pretty happy, actually. I think I'm gonna learn a lot, as the same as the guys watching us. So, guys, what we're gonna build? Basically, we're gonna start with an MVP. So it's a minimum viable product. And what I want with that minimum viable product is an app for runners. It's made from runners to runners. And it's an app who is actually going to be able to put people together. So it's going to be a community app. That's the main reason, that's the main goal of the app. The app wants to be a community for the runners and help runners. And the minimum thing I can see we can do in there is actually an app to involve these people and to put them to run together. That's what they like. They like to run. So we want to put them to run together. Talking about technology, which I think what's most interesting to you guys here in this channel, the tech stack we decided to go through is like a serverless tech stack. So we're going to be using React Native in the front end to build the app itself. We're going to be talking about the reasons why we decided in that later on. So React Native is going to be the front end. Back end is going to be Node.js with TypeScript. And we're going to be using AWS services to host it all. So for AWS services, we are planning to use Cognito, Lambda functions, Amplify, SSM parameters, S3 buckets, API gateway, many services, CloudFormation, even other services not in AWS like GitHub. So we're going to be using a lot of services to speed up the development of this app. Well, guys, before I actually start talking about the app itself, I want to tell you what we are not doing here, what we're actually not building. We are not aiming to build the best app in the world. We are not aiming to be like an example to anyone on how to build the best thing or the best tech stack, because we are actually not able to tell you. And to be honest, I don't think no one is actually able to tell you guys what's the best tech stack for you. So what we decided here is what the best tech stack for us, what it's going to be best for this app, for the size of this app, for the goals we have with this app. That's what we decided on. So we are not here to be an example like of the best things to do or the only way to do stuff. Don't expect that as being like, oh, that's the only way of creating an app. No, there are other ways, especially for enterprise apps. Like if you're going to build something commercial, you're planning to sell that and stuff, you can use that approach, but you can use more stuff integrated with that, or you can use a different approach. There are other ways to do that. So please don't look at that as the only way of doing stuff. Also, what it's not a competitor for other apps in the market, like Strava, for example, other apps related to exercising and to doing stuff outdoor. Like it's not an exercise app, or even it's not an app like we have those brand apps. Like every brand, they have their own app for runners. I don't want to be a competitor with them. What I want to build is a community. I want to build an app which is actually a community for runners. But this channel, it's actually not about runners. This channel is about technology. So I want to tell you guys what's the benefits for you. Why this app is going to help you, which may is not a runner or never run in your life. Why this app is actually going to help you, and what this video and this channel can help you with this app. First thing, this is one of the pillars I always say every single dev have to do to build experience. Usually we work in 3 pillars. Like you have to have the technical knowledge, yeah, that you get from any course, online course, TAFE course, uni, whatever you are learning, you're gonna get the technical knowledge. And that's where most of people focus on, but that's not enough. you also have to have involvement with the community and experience. And then the main question is how to build experience without landing in a job. If you don't have the opportunity to work in a job in the field, how are you going to gain experience? Here is the answer. This app or any app, any personal project is the answer on how you're going to gain experience. But when we say experience, it must be experience in the real world. In the battlefield, you have to be there and put your face there. Like you have to stand up and say, look, this is my app. It's open for users. People are using that. And that's what we are trying to build here. We are trying to build a real app, not just a simple tutorial. We're going to build a real app. We're going to try to bring all the best practices we're going to be able to find. We're going to get all the best practices in the market, and we're going to build a real app made for real users. And we already have a group of people keen to use this app. So if Gabi and Felipe, if you are if you are watching this video, thanks, because you're gonna be the beta testers of this app. For those who doesn't know, Felipe and Gabi, they are my run mates, and it's not by chance like they are gonna be testing this app with me because they are my running group. So guys, stay tuned. Like you are gonna be running with me. So yeah, guys, as I was saying, like it is a real app in the real world. Also, we're gonna have real users. Obviously, we're gonna start with this small group. We're gonna start in Sunshine Coast, but the idea is actually to expand this app for the whole Australia. It's gonna be free. It's gonna be open. So for whoever wants to use that, it's gonna be available. And it's about that availability which you're gonna be talking in this video. You're gonna be talking about the infrastructure and the code to make that available to a group of users. So that's the biggest difference between a simple tutorial you may do and this app. It's going to be used by real users, and you're going to have feedback from the real users. And from that feedback, you're going to be enhancing the app and doing all the changes they may ask for and we find useful. Lucas, what else they can expect from this app? What else these guys can expect from the app we are building?
All right. So I think like one of the biggest like benefits they can expect from the app would be like the cost of running. So the app is actually going to cost pretty much nothing to run. So it's like one of the good reasons why when we are building an MVP, like we use the tech stack that we are actually creating for them. So the users they can expect to have like a almost non-cost app running even on production, not just on the development side, but on the production. And another good point, which I think is worth to mention, is this app is not made like the series that we are creating here. They are not made for people who are very experienced in regards of development. So you don't have to be an expert to actually follow us. You know, like that's what we want to provide. Like we want to provide the whole journey, and we want you guys to enjoy with us this journey. So if you are a junior developer, this is going to be a very kind of excited project to work on. And then of course, like we will give you guys the base to start with. And then on top of that, you can build your own projects. So what you guys going to get from that is like Joy's experience, my experience. So we will try to embrace that and say, look, this is the mistakes that we made, and we don't want you guys, like a junior developers or people who is just starting, to to have the same mistakes, to make the same mistakes. So the experiences that we're going to give and we're going to provide is going to be something that is very valuable and very, very beneficial for all of you. Yeah, for sure.
That's really interesting. So you were saying we're going to be running an app almost for free in production.
That's
So
right.
it's not good only for junior devs. It's also good for someone who is creating a startup. For
Yep.
someone who is actually just starting their project and want to use that in the real world, it's actually very beneficial. And juniors can use this structure we're going to build they can use that in their own projects.
That's right.
That's very cool. So guys, I think you're really going to enjoy this process. But let's dive a bit down in what we're going to be doing. So Lucas, we're going to be creating a serverless application, right?
That's right. That's
Okay.
right.
And do you have some examples or who is actually using serverless application already? Some successful examples of people using that and why we are doing that?
Yeah, we actually have like big companies which like they are using already in production serverless. So a good example would be CodePen. So for who doesn't know who CodePen is like if you have a Visual Studio Code in your machine, they are running online. It's like a online based code IDE to actually write code. So it's a one. Another good example is Figma. So it's like it's a company which provides a very helpful way of design your product. So in your case, we could do in Figma or app and design the app in there. So Squirrel, Netflix, like I don't even need to say anything about Netflix because I think everyone knows Netflix already. So I think those companies they are very successful and they all running serverless behind the scenes, yeah, behind the what we can't see.
Interesting. Yeah, guys, we chosen serverless one because it's actually pretty powerful. We heard a lot of successful stories from people using serverless, and as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm also learning. Like my experience is mostly from like monolithic applications, and I've been working with software development for more than 20 years, but most of that experience is for monolithic applications. I've done a few projects and most of them just for understanding how does that work with serverless, but I've never ever built a real application with serverless. And that's why I actually invited Lucas, and I'm glad he put his hand up to actually help us with that because he has a good experience with serverless. Lucas, do you mind to tell us just a little bit of experience you had with serverless applications before?
Yeah, for sure. So the last company that I worked for, we were doing something like yeah, imagining like kind of Airbnb was something very similar. So, but the problem was like because we were a startup, we could not spend much money because the reason behind the scene was money. Yeah, so we couldn't spend much money. It was also like our MVP. We have to test it. So we have to create something where low cost, scalable, secure, and we could not spend money managing the services. So that was the main reasons why we actually chose serverless to build that MVP. So yeah, from that on, I never stopped.
Cool. Yeah, that's quite interesting. Also, I think it's worth mention the projects we have in the current company we're working on, like our current projects, because the softwares we have been working on currently in our day-to-day, the company started like 15, 20 years ago. We still have most of the things in a monolithic way, but whenever we have a chance, we're actually building new stuff in a different tech stack. And that's what Lucas brought to the team, actually. We recently had a project for a reports repository where we actually build everything in serverless very quickly.
Mm,
And Lucas actually got a lot of compliments because he actually created that report repository system very quickly. That was like wasn't a game changer, but was something very different from the way we have been doing things in the company. That really stand out. So yeah, thanks again, Lucas, for even helping our team at that time as well. But we know some of the cons of using serverless. So some people usually say there's a big learning curve. As we were talking about the company we have been working on, that was one of the problems on using that for that team because the team didn't have the experience at that time. So what happened when you have experience on creating software, and that experience is coming from many years, usually used to use like monolithic and doing things old-fashioned way. But when you start something from scratch, it's many times quicker to actually build that in serverless or with microservices or in the modern way. But there is a learning curve with that. There is a time you're going to have to spend to actually learn how to properly build that. Lucas, can you explain a little bit more about that learning curve and why we're actually using serverless, even though we have to learn things?
So I would say the learning curve in here is because like we are very like we want to be a developer, just a developer. We want just to put our hands on the code. When when you build something in serverless and you have to understand more things like how servers works behind the scenes and how to interact between services, and then you start thinking like, yeah, I I'm not just going to write code, because like write code is simple. We know that like it's not just about that, but the learning curve is like going up in terms of I need to learn new stuff. I need to learn like how to become actually a full stack developer, and sometimes even like a little bit of DevOps. So we kind of start going to another world. That's why like the people are a bit concerned about like the learning curve is too high. Well, it is if you're going to think about managing so many different services. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. But still, there's the benefits of that, which is actually going to
Mm-hmm.
be like you're going to have to keep up your knowledge. So you're going to keep your knowledge up to date, basically. And as a dev, you have to have that. That's true. Um, and also, this video, it's not made for people who already have experience. This video is
Mm-hmm.
made for people who are starting their career. And I would say the best way to start is actually with modern tech stack. It's still not the most used one. I believe there's a lot of companies out there still using like monolithic systems and legacy stuff, and obviously you have to learn both. But as you are starting learn from scratch, start to learn the proper way first, or the current way, let's say, not the proper, because both of them they're correct. There's not right or wrong. There's just different ways of doing things. But as you are just learning your first way of doing stuff, learn the serverless. I would say it's a good way to get things. Another consideration people usually have, Lucas, is about the vendor locking. So people sometimes they feel tied to a vendor. For example, for this app, we decided to go with AWS. We could have made a decision to go to Google Cloud, or we can go to Azure, for example, from Microsoft. They are the three biggest players in the market, but
Yeah.
we decided for AWS. Uh, what do you have to say for people who say we are going to be tied and locked into AWS?
Oh well. So first of all, like we are actually we have chosen one of the biggest providers in the market. If you compare, Azure, like Google Cloud and AWS, AWS is the biggest player in the market. So that's a very good reason why we are building the app in there. And another reason is like it's a very fast way from going to nothing to a production. So if you want to build an app very quick, so it's a very good way of doing, and that's another reason why we chose AWS, because they provide many different services, and we can go from zero to hero like in just like a few days. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely that's a big advantage, and that I would choose that instead of other ways of building that, just because of the speed. And yeah, being tied to a vendor doesn't look that bad to me, because despite there's a bit of work involved in changing provider, I would say it's less than uh, other things you have to change. Let's say if you decide to change one part of the stack, if you decide to change the database, or if you decide to change the backend language or something, it's a way easier when you have a serverless structure than when we have a monolithic structure. So that's another good reason to actually accept those cons, I would say. For example, being locked to a vendor. Alrighty. Before we also dive in how we're gonna build that, I want to bring you guys a bit of our experience on how not to build that. What we actually experienced in the past, which we want to avoid in this project. What's the sort of thing we have been doing, especially in early days? Like as I mentioned, guys, I've been in the market for almost 20 years. I think it's more than 20 years, but don't tell anyone. And Lucas has been in the market for a while already. So Lucas, I'm pretty sure you have been seeing a lot of things and you have been making a lot of mistakes. And we want to bring
100%.
to this project all our learnings, and we want to give that for free for you guys, all our experience. Obviously, you're not going to have our experience, but I'm going to tell you what the mistakes we made and what we want to do right at this time. Lucas, start with your mistakes. What you have been doing wrong, or I wouldn't call that mistakes. I would say like things you would do differently now, or things we are gonna do differently now, but different from the way you've done in the past.
Okay, I think one of them you already mentioned, like by being creating a monolithic application. So this is something that I will try to avoid for sure, and we will avoid in this app. And what's the reasons why we will avoid to build a monolithic application is, first, the business rules in a monolithic application, they are very centralized in one particular code base. You cannot have different business rules running in different services, as an example. So no, in this case, you cannot. Yeah, so another very good example is always related. What I like to do most is the cost. I'm a very person like in terms of cost management. I'm a very like tight, so I don't like to spend much money running stuff. So yeah, cost is one big factor why we also are building a serverless application, and that was the problem in the past. So hard to maintain. I think like in the past we know already like how hard it was to maintain a legacy code. So we will try to avoid that in this project. So that's another good reason to go into serverless microservices, like different from what I've been doing in the past. And one other reason I would say is API. So, running on microservices and building the stack and building the app in the way that we're going to build the app itself is going to provide APIs where third-party, customers or third-party providers can connect to our app through that APIs and get the data. I think like in regards to kind of monolithic way of mistakes that we have done in the past, those I think like it narrowed down a little bit what we have done that we try to avoid.
Yeah, that's true. I would say I'm in the same boat. Like, again, I wouldn't say it's a mistake. It was the way of building stuff in the past. It was the only
That's
way.
right.
Serverless was not around, despite serverless has been around for a while now. But by the time we started, that was the only way, and that was the way people were building stuff. But that brought some issues, as you just mentioned, like centralized business rules. In serverless, we can have like that separated, and especially if you want to change something, you can change, or if you want to add something new, you are not tied to the stack. You can build something new in a different stack if you want, just because it's separated. Also, the cost of running, that's a pretty important thing as well, as you mentioned. I think, especially in this case, we want to run something hopefully for free, because we're going to be giving the app for free. We're not going to be making any money on top of that. I'm not planning to sell anything, at least not at this point, at the beginning. Who knows what the future gets for us, but at the beginning, I'm not planning to make any money out of that. So there's no reason to pay for that if we are not getting anything or if we are not charging anyone. So it's pretty important to keep the costs low or almost for free. Yeah. But talking about previous experiences, another big mistake I've done in the past was actually build things without look after any pattern. Just start with, as a dev, we usually want to put our hands on. We usually want to start to write code, and we don't pay attention on what we are
That's
doing.
right.
We usually don't
Mhm.
plan stuff ahead. We don't like trying to find any pattern or anything to do what we are doing. And guys, you can be pretty sure whatever you're going to face, any problem you're going to find, someone else already had that problem. Someone else already built the same thing. So before writing any code, try to look for patterns. That's what we're going to be bringing to this app as well. We're going to be bringing some design patterns, which I've not been using in the past, and I think it was a big mistake, at least for me. But that's completely my fault because the design patterns they also been around for ages, and like it was me being very anxious to actually put my hands on and start to write code. Lucas,
Yeah.
any other mistake you made you want to avoid this time?
Yes, like as you mentioned, like it's some patterns that was around back in time, and then we actually like it didn't look. So I'm thinking like not using on premises like servers or anything like that. So that's why we're going serverless, but like trying to even on top of serverless, like build on top of the best practices. So we have some practices that we need to take in consideration when you are building our app. And we I personally I didn't look there before, so yeah, so I miss that. I miss like following the best practices even for the provider itself. Like AWS provides you some best practices, and we will try to follow that like very closely.
Cool. So we're gonna actually be bringing a shortcut for these guys who are watching this video. If you guys follow with this series of video, it's not gonna be this video today only. We're gonna be building a series of video, but if you follow up with all the videos, you're gonna have actually a shortcut for all the best practices as well. So that's pretty interesting. Let's start it. Let's start to tell these guys what we're actually gonna do and how we're
Yeah.
gonna do that. Let's go. First thing, guys, we want to build, we already said that many times, we want to build a serverless app for runners. We're going to be using a framework called SST. I'm sorry, I think I have to step back and say few things before actually starting in the tech stack. Before making this video, I spoke to Lucas and we have to make a lot of decisions about the project. We made a few decisions already. There are many other decisions we're going to have to make in the next steps. But for now, we had to do the planning step. So the planning step is sort of done to you guys. So we're going to be telling here what are the decisions we make, what are the decisions we made, and why we made those decisions. At least like a rough concept of everything. We don't want to dive deep on every single thing because it's going to be very time consuming to actually go deep and explain everything. So we want to give you a rough explanation about every single step we took and what we decided to do in every single part. So the first decision was the architecture. What the architecture you're going to be building. We already said that many times. We're going to build a serverless architecture. To build a serverless architecture, it's easier if you have a framework behind you. So frameworks, they usually speed up stuff. They usually bring it to you a lot of already done stuff, which you can just use instead of building everything from scratch. And the framework we decided to go for is called SST framework. Lucas, can you explain a little bit what's that framework and why we decided to go with that?
Okay, so the main reason first is because like we have some knowledge and we have projects running in production using the framework, that's a very solid base to tell that the framework, it is a framework that we know already. That's one of the reasons. And another reason is it is a framework who actually works very, very well with serverless applications. So the framework was built for that. We have many other frameworks which we could be using, but by having a framework which was built for serverless application, so Jesus, like you mentioned before, it's a very big help in terms of speed up the development. So that was the main reason why we chose SST as a framework to build our application.
Yeah, another thing which caught my attention about the SST framework is it is made by the community. So it is an open source framework, and it's not tied to the vendor, to the provider. So for me, it's something really important. Despite we're going to be tied to the provider related to the deployment of the stuff, we're still not tied to the provider with the framework. The framework, it is related to AWS, but let's say if tomorrow AWS stop all the free tiers they have, everything they have for free, probably, it's not a promise because I don't have any power of decision there, but probably the community who built the framework, they're gonna point to another direction and make the framework working in another provider. So that's my guess, because it's not tied to the provider itself. That's another good reason why we chose that. The next part of the stack we chose was the front end. We chose React Native for the front end. And the reason we chose that at the beginning first was because I want to learn a little bit of React Native. I never worked with React Native, so it is a challenge. And that's something I definitely recommend you guys to actually embrace the challenges. I've been in the market for a long time. I've been using many different languages, but I want to stay up to date. I want to stay able to do anything and able to talk to people in the market. I don't want to be out of date. That's why I'm challenging myself, and I'm put my hand up to actually learn something new, even after 20 years. That's one of the reasons, not the only one. I think Lucas can bring other reasons why we choose React Native, not just for my learning.
Apart from the personal choice,
Yeah.
because I've been working with React, but yeah, React Native also has a very big community, and it's very helpful as a framework, and then also can speed up a lot of in terms of components as well. So we can get components from the web if we need it. We can write components in case we need something very customized. But yeah, it is like you said, let's embrace the challenge. It's going to be a challenge for me too, for sure.
Interesting. Yeah, the community stuff is also important. We have other languages, not many to be honest, from my research, because we want to build like a mobile app. And for mobile app, we either have to go to the native language, so tied to the operating system. So if you're going to build to iOS, you probably have to build in what's the language for iOS? I just forgot.
Swift.
Swift, yeah. You have to build in Swift. If you go to build to Android, you have to build in Kotlin. That's the native language for the OS. And so we're going to end up with actually two apps in two code bases for every operating system. That was not a good idea. So there are other languages which are multi-platform, and React Native is one of them. The other one is probably that
We
one
have
from
Flutter.
Flutter. And to be honest, I'm not aware of anything else. You can actually build something multi-platform. There was another one, pretty old one actually. I've been working like more than 10 years ago. Not Cordoba, it was sort of a framework, very similar to what React Native and Flutter are doing now, but like early days actually. But yeah, I believe they are not the only ones, but at least React Native and Flutter, they are the current ones. Let's say if we do a quick search, we are not going to find something like standing out at the moment. And then we decide to go to React Native. So we build one app, and that one app is going to run in both operating systems, Android and iOS. And the next step in the tech stack we chose was actually the backend language. Lucas, what's the backend language? What are we going to be doing in the
Okay.
back?
Well, some people may disagree, but like I love work with JavaScript. So I think by having an end-to-end JavaScript application, it is something that also going to be beneficial for people who is going to start working and start following us in these series of videos. So we will be using Node.js in the backend, but we will tweak a little bit, which is we're going to use TypeScript. And the reason why we're going to use TypeScript is because we're going to try to be a bit more organized in terms of coding. We don't want to have objects here and there, upside down, flying around. No, we want to build something where we can say it is something organized. We have like this concept of object oriented. So we will try the best, follow the best practice. Like we said before, we will come up with design patterns. So if we do just JavaScript, well, we will lack a little bit in terms of being organized, be typed, like in terms of objects. So we need to have something more, a little bit more restrict. And in a long run, if we want to build a big team, we already have everything pretty tight, pretty organized. So I think that's why we come up with these choices in terms of using Node.js, because the whole application is JavaScript, and TypeScript to organize our app, to have like the type oriented kind of stuff like running behind the scenes.
Interesting. Yeah, and also we are going to be able to use basically the same language from the backend and to the backend to the front end as well. So it's all
Yeah.
everything is going to be JavaScript, TypeScript, let's say. Despite they're not exactly the same, but TypeScript
Hmm.
is part is one extension of JavaScript, let's say. Yeah, or is that an extension or is that like a short version? It's not actually an extension. It's not expanding that. It's cutting
No,
out stuff. You are defining
yeah,
types.
yeah, you're
How we can
defining
call that?
types, and then the things like you compile that types in JavaScript later. So that's the interesting part. So yeah, you're creating kind of imagining like Java back in the days. So you have like this pretty heavily object-oriented language, and JavaScript was always like I remember from when I was developing Java, everyone was like kind of but like Java and JavaScript they're the same. No, they're not the same.
Different.
So completely different. And then kind of similar happens with TypeScript and JavaScript. Everyone thinks they are the same. No, you still can, of course, you still can build things in TypeScript in the same way you build JavaScript, like they running the same way, very similar. But no, like TypeScript, I think is much more powerful because you have to be very, restrict in terms of typing.
Interesting. Next part of the tech stack, we have to talk about database. And here was
Yes.
another different thing or another hard decision we had to make. The first decision is actually about a relational database or a NoSQL database or a file-based
Documented
database
database.
or a key pair database and many types
Yeah.
of database we have. But basically we can separate that in relational and non-relational or relational and NoSQL database. There are two choices here, two options to actually choose from. And again, that was primarily another personal decision. We decided to go for a relational database and we decided for PostgreSQL. So we are going to be using Postgres as a relational database for this application. And then someone can come up and say, but that's not the best option. There are other options. Yeah, we are aware of the many options we have. One of the reasons we decided for that was because we are more familiar with relational database. Despite we are not working with PostgreSQL in day-to-day basis, I've been working with DB2 for the last 5-7 years, I think. And before that, I was working with MySQL. But it was always like relational database. And talking about embracing challenge and learning new things, I think is already enough for me to learn the new front-end language. I don't want to get everything new, otherwise I think it's going to be too hard. But because we are talking about serverless, if later on the track we decided to change that, it's not going to be a huge work to actually go and change a database or to migrate from a relational to a non-SQL database. It's not going to be a big job. That was another reason we decided for that. It was because of the familiarity we have with that, and because PostgreSQL is a powerful and strong database. There are other few stuff about Postgres. I'm not sure if you want to mention that, Lucas. Few advantages of using PostgreSQL.
Oh yeah, there are quite few. So some advanced features we can say that Postgres they have, which is like work with geospatial data. So correct me if I'm wrong. Like I know it's kind of sorry guys. English is not my first language. I'm doing my best. Geospatial data. So yeah, so there are some support that we will need later on in your app, which is the location of the user. So we will try to get that location via maybe GPS or something. We use the GPS embedded in the device. And yeah, Postgre, they have a very nice way to work with the geospatial data. Oh wow, quite hard for me to say, but yeah. Another one is like the full text search capability. So Postgre offers that as well, which is pretty cool. There are some extensibility, concurrency control, which I think you can talk more about it, like concurrency control. Yeah, because I think DB2, I don't know how they work with concurrency control. I think they do have it, but not sure how. I think I would be better talking about why we didn't choose another database than why we chose Postgre. You have more knowledge than me in that area, but yeah, that's the ones that I can point it out.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think like it's a very, by the end of the day, it's sort of personal decision as well. Like we decided to go for one relational database because we are experienced with that, and Postgres because between all the relational database, that was the most handful one for this particular app. But there is no particular reason to use that in another app. Like for you guys who are using this as a scaffolding, as something to actually start your own project, you don't have to go to to Postgres. You can decide either to another relational database, some easier one like MySQL, or you can go to a non-SQL database as well. So if you are building your own, really depends on what's the usage of your app, on how you're going to be using that. Keeping going in the tech stack, we are going to be using AWS services. So there are many AWS services. I think we are not going to dive deep in that now because it's a series of videos. So I'm going to be mentioning that to you guys. But over time, in the next videos, we're going to be talking about each service individually and what this services does and how it works and all that sorts of things. So we're going to be working with Cognito. We're going to be working with Lambda functions, Amplify, SSM parameters, S3 buckets, API gateways, SES for emails, SNS for messages, CloudFormation, like for infrastructure as a code. Also, we're going to be using RDS to work with the relational database, and GitHub for version control and for deployment actions. So basically, those are the services, the external services we're going to be using for hosting and deployment of the app. And that pretty much summarizes all the tech stack we're going to be using. What I want to bring to you guys now is actually a step-by-step on how we're going to build that. What are the steps we have to follow? And obviously, we are just starting. We didn't build much yet. So I want to bring to you guys an update on what we have done already and what we are going to be doing from now on. So first, I'm going to go step by step, and then I can tell you guys what's done and what's not. The first step, and the most important one, and what is mostly, I wouldn't say bad done or not done. Most people simply forget that and don't do that, which is the planning. They just go and put their hands on, especially devs, especially if it's not like a company or someone starting a startup or something like that. If it's just a dev who wants to create an app, the first thing they do is actually opening the IDE and starts to code without even know what they are coding. So guys, don't make that mistake. Don't do that. Before opening the IDE and starting to code, you have to do the very first step. I would say that's the step 0. It's not even the first step. It's the step 0, the thing you have to do before anything else, which is the planning. You have to have a clarity on what you are going to be building and what you're going to be planning. There's plenty of things to be planned. You have to be creating first a very short description of your app. What's involved in the planning? First thing, a short description, what your app is going to be doing, like in a few sentences. For example, my one is going to be an app for community for runners. That's the app we're going to be building. It's going to be a community for runners. That's what the app is. And if I have to describe that a little bit more, I would say it's an app where you can actually book some events or some park runs, and then people can RSVP for those park runs, and then you're going to show up, and then it's going to track your runnings. It's going to connect to your smartwatches. Basically, that's what the app is. That's a short description. And that's the first thing you have to have in mind. After having that first description, you go to the second phase of the planning, which is defining the features. Which features your app is going to have. Then you're going to be a bit more deep in the details and put in bullet points. What are the features? Just bullet points. You don't have to create a huge description on every single feature. Just bullet points on what are the features you are expecting your new app to do. Once you have that, you have to think of people who are going to be using that. What are the actors? What are the people involved in your app? What are the people who are going to be using that and how they're going to be using that? And from there, we create what we call use cases. What are the use cases for your app? For example, for me, a use case is, as a runner, someone can go and actually RSVP to an event. That's one use case. I'm going to open my app, I'm going to see the events, and I'm going to click the button to RSVP to participate in that event. That's one use case. And that's just an example. I have many use cases in my planning. And when I say planning, the best practice is actually create a document. So you can create that document anywhere you want. It can be Google Drive, Confluence page, any tool you want to use to actually write it down, Microsoft Word document, whatever you want. Just to write down what you're going to be doing before actually coding. Other than the actors in the use case, you also have to define what are the non-functional requirements. What are non-functional requirements? You're going to be asking yourself, what the hell is that? You have to be creating requirements for example, for performance. What's acceptable for loading a screen in your app? I don't accept more than 2 seconds to load a list, for example. If I'm going to list my events, I won't accept more than 2 seconds to load any page. That's a performance requirement. Or you should be defining like security requirements. how I'm going to secure my app, what sort of thing I'm going to be doing for security, availability, how much availability you need in that. For my app, as it's a personal project, it's not something we're going to put in the market to sell that. There's no people paying for that. The availability, probably the requirement for availability is going to be lower than something someone is paying for.
Mm-hmm.
And also, this something someone is paying for is going to be lower than something critical, something dealing with a health fee or some other stuff. It's going to be critical. So the availability needs to be way more. You have to plan all that sort of stuff. Scalability. So there are many things to actually plan off, which are not functional requirements. You also should be writing down all the data requirements, which data you're going to need, what sort of data. For example, for me in this app, I'm sure I'm going to need people data, like who are the users, who are the runners. I'm going to need events data. What are the events happening, when they are happening, where they are happening, who is going to be in which event. So I'm going to need enrollment or like RSVP data, people booked to participate in an event. So all that data you have to be planning and defining the structure of that data. You're going to be defining the structure of your database. All those things needs to be in the requirements, in the requirement document. Also, you're going to have interface requirements. You're going to have architecture requirements. We just spoke about many aspects of the architecture. All of those things, they are in our requirement document. But again, we want to be agile. So we don't want to plan everything beforehand. We want to have an idea. And when I say requirements, we have to have what's the minimum requirements to achieve our goal. In this case, our goal is a minimum viable product. If it's a minimum viable product, I just want to define the minimum requirements I need to kick off that. What are the minimum requirements to actually start the app, to have that up and running, to have that deployed for the first time, to have the first users? That's the minimum things we want to define. But still, we have to define the architecture, we have to define the interface requirements, data requirements, everything, even for that first single step. We have to define everything before coming to even the first step of the creation of the app. So step 0, before anything else, planning. Step 1, Lucas, what's the step 1?
All right, as you said, like step 0 is planning, and this is kind of a life lesson. So I'm listening, and then like, oh wow, I have to plan all my life. So step 1, I would say, step 1 in the app creation would be the actual account creation. So before we start creating your app, you have to look the services and what you're actually going to use. As an example, so we're going to use AWS, so you have to create an account on AWS. So the second example is like GitHub, so we're going to create a GitHub account. Third example, I have here my friend. Third example is like the social logins. So you want to connect your app with Google, with Facebook. So you have to create like in a Google developer account, a Facebook developer account. So those are that's like the first step is the account creation.
Yeah, that's it. Like second step or first step, account creation actually. So guys, step 0, planning. Step 1, account creation, exactly as Lucas mentioned. And then step 2, what's the step 2? Step 2 is actually framework setup. As I mentioned before, we decided to go for SST framework, and we have to set up that framework. We have to set up our dev environment, everything. So download the framework, download the dev environment if you don't have it in your computer, start to set up everything, start to configure like accounts, all those accounts you have created, you have to set it up in the framework. You have to set up the way you're going to deploy stuff, like in the framework, how you're going to interact with things, your IDE, your plugins, everything you have to actually have ready before put your hands on in the code. So that's the second step. And that's going to lead us to the third step, which is, Lucas?
The third step, I think, is the really, really, really hands-on in coding. So that's when we're going to start create our stack, which we'll be using, like Joy mentioned, SSCT framework and cloud formation to be deployed to AWS. So yeah, that's the first hands-on on coding, actually coding, that we see our app start getting like built, start running. The fourth step, I would say, that's Joy's time.
Oh yeah, fourth step, let with me. That's API and backend coding. That's the fourth step, guys. That's actually, as Lucas mentioned, first thing you're going to be putting your hands on is actually creating the stack. You're going to tell the provider what you're going to be using in terms of services, but you're going to put everything in coding. And then after you create your environment of services and stack, you're going to put your hands on creating the APIs and the backend of your system. So that's where you're going to create your connections with database, where you're going to be saving data, retrieving data. You have to plan all the types of requests you're going to be doing to the backend. So that's how you have to think here what you want to deliver in terms of data. So you have to think, okay, I have to retrieve a list of events. For example, in our app, we have to retrieve a list of events, a list of events per location. That's where the database feature is going to be very handful. For example, we're going to submit a location and we want to know all the events near to that location. What are all the events like in a radio of 50 meters or in a radio of 50 kilometers or 100 kilometers away? We have to define all those sorts of things, and that's where the database extended functionality is going to be pretty handful here. But yeah, that's the fourth step, actually creating the back end and the API endpoints. And after doing that, then we're going to be thinking of fifth step, Lucas?
The fifth step, which is the security in terms of the coding. So how the user authenticates, and for that we were using a service which we already mentioned called Cognito. Cognito will is going to handle all the authentication, will generate all the tokens, and everything. And in terms of security, we have another service on AWS called SSM parameters, which is going to manage all the secrets of our app, where we're not going to store on our apps anything, no secrets, nothing. We won't deploy, won't push to GitHub any of the secrets. We won't have, let's say, our env file in this case. Instead of that, we'll be using a service on AWS which is specific and has this specific responsibility, and it's going to make, of course, our app a bit more secure. And in saying that, we're going to go to the next step, which Joey will mention you guys, which is the front end and app coding.
Cool. So just before we jump into the front end, Lucas, I want to put a bit more clarity on that secret management. That was another decision we had to make, like how we're going to manage that, because we know the most used way these days is actually env files. We have environmental variables where we have those saved in a file in every single environment, and then we have things. But as a devs, the way to share that is going to be unsafe. How I'm going to share the Google password with Lucas? I'm going to have to send that to him, and I'm going to have to send that to someone else who's going to be using another environment. That's why we decided for that. What's the name? SSM parameters?
SSM parameters.
SSM parameters. Yeah. Thanks. Let's go to the front end, which is the sixth.
Let's go to the front end
step. All right, front end. After having your back end, after having your security stuff sorted out, we're gonna go to the front end and actually code that. That's the moment where you're gonna put your hands on in the React Native app. And then the first thing we're gonna be thinking of is gonna be the design. What are the screens we're gonna have? How is gonna be the design of those screens? Are we using a template? Are you using like Figma images and trying to build our own design? Are we using a bunch of components already done for us? That's the sort of thing we're going to be thinking of when we get to that step. We are far away from there. We didn't start it yet, but when we get there, we're going to have to think of design. After the design and the screens, we're going to have to think of the routes. What are the routes we're going to follow between the screens? What are the links we're going to have between the screens, and what routes we're going to need to go back and forth in the app? Another thing we're going to have to think of in the front end is actually login and registration. So people have to first register themselves, and we want them to be able to register with their social networks like Google or Facebook. I'm not sure if we're going to be using Facebook yet, but Google for sure. Apple account, if people want to log in with their Apple account, and then they are going to be using those accounts later on to actually get into the system, and that's what's going to identify them. That needs to be integrated with the front end as well. It's going to be integrated with the front end, it's going to be part of the back end and Cognito system, and it's make everything safe. And after all of those things, then we're going to be coding the screens themselves. So after defining which sort of design we're going to be using, what are the routes, how people are going to log in, how safe is going to be the front end, then we're going to start to code all the screens. We're going to start with the most important ones first, because as I said, it's MVP. We want to follow agile system. So we're going to try to build the most important things first and start to deploy as we go. And once we have the first minimum viable product, once we have the first minimum system running, we're going to have to go to the next step, which is buying a domain and setting it up. Lucas, anything to say about buying a domain and setting it up?
Oh yeah, for sure. So I think like there is nothing better than having something that you built online and be able to share your knowledge with someone else, which will appreciate what you have done. So for sure, this is the running app, but like as a personal development, you can build whatever you want. And in this step, we will teach you, we'll give you a lecture in how you buy a domain, how you set it up, how you connect that domain with your app, so you can see that, like in a kind of real world, how that works and how that's running. So yeah, that's going to be the very excited step, because that's when it's not just in your local machine, it's actually to the world, like to say, oh wow, I want to share that with my teammates, I want to share that with my schoolmates or my uni mates, like, and that's going to be pretty excited. Yeah.
Sounds pretty exciting. And
Yes, it
then
is.
the last thing, guys, after coding everything, having your domain, having your app ready, we're still missing one thing. It's still not all. We still have one last thing to do, which is actually plan and automate your deployment. How we're going to be deploying this app, because don't think it's actually building that and deploying only once, and that's going to be there forever. You're going to be giving maintenance to that app all the time. So you're probably going to be enhancing that many times. You're going to keep coding that and keep fixing bugs and keep adding functionalities and things. And we want that to be automatically deployed to the production environment, to all the environments we have. So when we get to that point, we're going to be talking about the environments: dev environment, staging environment, and production environment. And then we're going to be creating an automation to actually deploy your code for that. Every time you change anything since the beginning, since the first step we said here, like if you change anything, the infrastructure code, if you change anything in your backend code, if you change your thing in your API interface, if you're changing anything in your front end code, everything needs to be automatically deployed. Everything needs to be reflected into the environment, into the production environment. And that has to be smoothly and automatically. So that's the actual last step of the app before launching, before saying to the world, here's my app, use it. Obviously, that's not the last step. It's still not finished because we have maintenance. But maintenance, it never finishes. It lasts forever. So you're never going to finish your app. You're going to start it, but you're never going to finish it. As soon as someone is using that, you're probably going to be maintaining that. But that's actually close the cycle of building an app. Guys, just one heads up about the deployments, the automated deployment. We left that for the last item, but it's actually not the last item in the development process. The only reason why we left that behind was because we don't want to automatically deploy before we actually have anything visual to deliver to the users. So we're going to build the automatic part of that at the end. During the development process, we actually could have that automated. Every time we push something to Git, we could deploy that to test environments or to the integration environment. But we want to make that manual process during the development as an option. Like we made that, again, I told you guys we made many decisions. That was another decision we had to make. At this point in time, we decided to leave that to the end, but doesn't mean we are going to wait until there. We may change our mind in the middle, so we may change that if we find it's too hard to actually deploy that manually over time, or if the team gets bigger and bigger and we have more people and it's getting hard to actually deploy that, we can push that forward and actually make that automation earlier. So it all depends what we're going to be facing. I don't want you guys to take what we said in this video as something written in stone. We are going to do an agile approach. So that's what we have in mind at this point in time. But doesn't mean we're not going to change our mind in a couple of weeks or over the process. We may change our mind over the process. When we are doing things, we may feel we have to change this or we have to change that, or this option is better. We made a bad decision. So there is no regrets at all to go back and change our mind. Like we are pretty open to change our mind as soon as we identify we made a mistake. As soon as we identify we actually found something wrong, we are going to go back and change it. That's the beauty of an agile process. We're going to be learning while we are doing. So everything we said up to now is what we think is right up to now with the information we have up to now. So if something comes later, we're probably going to change our mind. And those are all the steps we have. Lucas, do you have anything else to complement? Did we said everything already?
No, I think we have said everything. So yeah, it's going to be a very, very excited series. Like, yeah, you guys can't wait.
Yeah, guys, and we got to the big moment. As I said in the beginning of the video, we have a big announcement to do. Lucas actually is available to do some live code sessions. So we are going to be coding this system live. We're going to be doing that every Thursday at 5:30 p.m. for the next 4 weeks. Obviously, we're not planning to finish everything in 4 weeks. That's what we are committing with. So Lucas is committed to code with us. He's going to be coding the front end. We're going to have sessions with the back end as well. Probably one of my students is going to be coding that. I'm not sure if he's going to accept the challenge to do that live. Alex, that's for you if you were watching that. I even didn't say anything to him. I think he's going to be surprised. But yeah, we're going to be doing live sessions of coding. That's going to be completely different for any video I've made, guys. It's going to be only coding. So I'm not going to be explaining architecture. I'm not going to be explaining anything. We're going to open a live, start to code, sharing our screen, and Lucas is going to be coding and explaining what he's doing for the next 4 weeks, every Thursday, 5:30 p.m. Stay tuned. Don't miss that. All right, Lucas, did I said everything? What else? Anything else you have to complement?
No, I have nothing else to say. All I have to say is just thank you for having me here. It was a pleasure, and it will be awesome. It will be amazing. So you guys, yeah, It's gonna be live coding, like you mentioned. It's also gonna be a challenge for myself, but yes, it's gonna be awesome. So it's gonna be a very good learning, yeah, for everyone, including
Cool.
me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's surprising to me too. So big thank you to helping, and thanks for putting your hands up and helping us with this app. To be honest, I was a bit concerned, like when I promised this app, because I've been promising that for a while now. Actually, I've been saying to people, "Oh, I'm building an app. I'm building an app," but actually didn't start that. So I was a bit concerned. I'm pretty glad, like you put your hand up and it's helping me and helping the team, the Tech Career Booster team. So yeah, I think we are going to end up with a very nice result. This app is going to be live soon. Hopefully
That's what we
sooner
hope.
than hopefully sooner than I imagine. Guys, don't expect us to build that very quickly because we all work full time. I'm working full time. Lucas is working full time. Alex, who's going to be building the backend, he's working as well. So we are doing that as a side project. The speed of building that is not going to be the same as if we had a company or if we had like a startup and we were working at that like full time. It's completely different. We're going to be doing that in our spare time, which is pretty short actually. So don't expect that to be built ASAP because it won't. We're going to be building that very slowly, step by step, 1 hour per week, probably in the live sessions. We're going to be doing a few things more than that, but not much more. So you can't expect much working like 1 hour per week in one project. We're not going to go too far or too fast, definitely.
That's right.
But yeah, big thank you, Lucas. Thanks for this video. And I'm going to say thank you in advance for the next ones because I'm pretty sure you're going to be here in the next few videos. So guys, stay tuned. It's going to be two things actually. One's going to be the live sessions and the other thing is going to be this series of video. So live session is going to be every week and this video probably every fortnight. We're going to be building another video of this series telling you guys where we are up to. At the moment, the only thing we have done the first two steps. We said to you, we have done the planning, we have everything planned, everything written down in the paper, and we started the setup of the framework. We have downloaded the framework, we set up the dev environment, we set up even like accounts. We already set up AWS accounts, GitHub accounts, but not all the accounts are ready. We're still creating the accounts. So that's where we are up to at the moment. And yeah, that's it. And I hope I can see you guys in the next video as well. Stay tuned, stay with us. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to share that. Tell everyone, tell all your mates, tell everyone we are doing that. Everyone who is interested in coding, developing, and everything. Tell us to come with us to watch this video and to watch the next ones, to watch the live coding sessions. Share, spread the word. And don't forget to like the video as well. Leave your thumbs up. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next time.
Thank you.